Hey Changemaker! Welcome to Learning for Good, the only podcast that teaches nonprofit leaders how to leverage training to drive performance, improve capacity, and fuel their mission impact. Do you ever feel like your nonprofit is growing, but your people just aren't keeping up? Or like you're fixing the same problems over and over? Do you wonder how to build confident, capable staff who know how to lead, not just execute? If we haven't met yet, I'm Heather, and I know how hard it can feel to get people to do what's expected of them. Trust me, I have 3 kids. I've tried telling people what to do and how. I've tried the traditional training approaches, and I realized that just doesn't work. And that's when I started researching what does work. Now, I help mission-driven leaders use learning to drive performance, build capacity, and make change that lasts. And I'm sharing it all on this podcast. So block your calendar, turn off your Teams or Slack chat, and let's dive in. It's Learning for Good.
Like many people, at least I hope I'm not the only one, we have papers that stack up in our house. Does this happen to you? Permission slips that need to be signed and returned, bank statements that need to be filed, artwork that is just waiting to mysteriously disappear? Please tell me it's not just me. Now, I like to keep things fairly neat and organized in my house, so the paperwork was starting to get to me. And so I grabbed a pretty file folder and I put all the paperwork inside this folder. It solved the problem. There wasn't paperwork lying around the house everywhere, right? But now I was faced with a new problem. When will we go through the paperwork and take the necessary action of signing or filing or disposing of it? Because if we don't do that, if we forget about it, it's going to add up and get out of control pretty quickly. And we might miss something that really actually needs to get done. So I started thinking about what I know about behavior change and habit, and I came up with the perfect plan. My husband meal preps each week, and so we could habit stack this. He could go through the paperwork while his food is cooking, right? Something he's already doing, and we're just adding a habit to it. Great, right? I had a plan. It was the perfect plan. I told my husband the plan. We have not stuck with the plan. And the paperwork piles up inside that pretty folder. The problem is my husband doesn't think about the file folder when he's meal prepping. He doesn't remember. So even though we have this solid plan, it isn't being executed. Today, I want us to think about why our current approaches to training aren't working. Because sometimes even when you have a solid training, behavior doesn't change. Let's dive in. It's Learning for Good. We've all been there. You created a solid training plan and you offered it to your people, but things just don't seem to be changing. Why is that? Today, I want to talk through 5 reasons your current approach to training isn't working. Now, I spend a lot of time talking about needs analysis and identifying the skill or behavior that needs to change. And this is done in collaboration with your stakeholders, tied to organizational strategy. And I spend time talking about that, and actually a really exciting opportunity if you are wanting to get really intentional about being the strategic partner your organization needs. I'm going to invite you to join me at the next Learning for Good Summit in July. We're going to spend a lot of time on that there. It's going to be a great way to dive into what really is a strategic leadership intensive for nonprofit training professionals. So I'll drop some information about that in the show notes. But for this episode, I want you to assume that you've done those things. You've identified the skill or behavior that needs to change. You know the organizational context and you know the individual's context, right? You know what learning strategy or what the organization strategy is that the learning needs to tie to, and you understand kind of what the individual going through the training needs. That's important, and that's going to be our first step of this process, we're going to call it the what and how. But I want to assume for now that this is in place and you've created a solid training that's designed to change behavior, but it isn't working. So what else might be missing? Those are the 5 things that we're going to talk about today. So you have the what and how. You know that this is solid. Something is still not quite right. People know the action you want them to take, but they don't know when to take the action. So let's imagine that you are driving to a new restaurant. You've never been there and the roads are all new to you. And you reach an intersection and you know that you generally stop at intersections, but you're looking around and there seems to be multiple streets crossing in one place and it's confusing and not really clear what or where, right? So you know you should stop, but you aren't exactly sure when to stop. This happens to our learners too. They learn what action you want them to take, they understand it, they practice it, they develop the skill to implement it, but when they get back to their job, they don't know when they would use it. I see this happen a lot with coaching training for managers. The manager attends the training, they learn how to coach, they get pretty good at it because, again, it was a really solid training. But then they get back to their job and they have an interaction with their direct report and they're just kind of confused. Does this particular situation call for coaching? Or should I just give direction? Or maybe this is actually a discipline situation. When do I use this new skill? And so what happens is they default to what they've always done. They don't coach. It's not because they don't know how, it's because they weren't sure when. People need to know what you want them to do and how to do it, but they also need to know when to take the action. Now, another side of this is why. People know the action that you want them to take, but they don't know why they should take that action. So let's go back to our driving analogy. Let's say this time, though, you are teaching your teenager to drive and you tell your teenager to stop at the stop signs so they know they should do it. You've taught them how to use the brakes so they know how to do it. But your teenager doesn't have as much life experience as you. And they may be thinking, the stop sign looks optional, right? It's a quiet street. No one is around. It'll be okay. I just roll on through the stop sign. They don't necessarily understand the danger of running the stop sign. They don't know why it's important for them to stop. This also happens to our learners quite a bit. They attend a training, they learn a new skill, but they aren't really sure why it matters. So an example might be data entry. You told your staff they need to enter data into the system. Maybe it's donor data, for example. You've taught them how to enter data into the system, but they don't know why it's important. They don't understand how core data impacts continuity, relationship building, reporting, and at the end of the day, funding. So they don't do it consistently every time. It's not that they don't know how, they don't understand why. So people need to understand why when taking an action. People know what action to take, but they don't remember to take the action. This is another thing that I see happen. And this is what my husband ran into with my habit stacking idea. It was a good idea, right? But he didn't remember to go through the folder when he was meal prepping. This also applies in other areas. So our driver, for example, maybe you're driving up to that stop sign, but you're distracted. Have you ever been so engrossed in thought as you're driving somewhere that you can't remember how you got there? I don't even remember turning on this street. When you're distracted, you might not remember. You might roll right through that stop sign, even if it's one that you pass every single day. So an example of this might be trauma-informed care training, right? We have a lot of staff or volunteers that are going to need to use trauma-informed care in their work in nonprofits. And so you train them how to do it. But when tensions get high on the job, they might fall back into old habits. It's not intentional. They just didn't remember to do it differently. They were overwhelmed, emotions were high, and they didn't implement what they learned. So your people have to know what to do and how to do it, but they also have to remember to take the action you want them to take. Now, sometimes people know what action to take, but it's too hard to take that action. Sometimes it's just hard and it might even be out of their control. Let's say you're driving down the road and all of a sudden you realize that you totally missed a stop sign, right? You're breezing through that intersection and you're like, what just happened? You never saw a stop sign. The sign was hidden behind an overgrown tree. Has that ever happened to you? Or maybe you're driving along and it's pouring down rain and you know that stop sign is coming up, so you brake, but you skid through the intersection because the road conditions didn't allow you to stop. The action was hard to take. Our learners go to training where conditions are at their best. Even if we try to simulate poor conditions, right? It's not always going to be the same exactly as on the job. And they get back to their job and conditions are just different. The process maybe doesn't quite match what you taught them, or the environment doesn't really allow for what they need to do. The supervisor doesn't support it. They don't implement. So maybe you're offering a customer service training and you've told your staff how to greet your quote unquote customers, right? The people that you're serving. And you've taught them what to do. But then when the customer comes in, they're face down in their computer because they're doing the required paperwork from a safety situation that happened, right? They just faced the situation. They're doing the required paperwork for that. And the phone is ringing and people are yelling in the background and their boss is angry because the paperwork isn't done yet. Suddenly, it becomes hard to take that action, even though they had good intention, even though they knew what to do and how to do it. So sometimes it's just hard. Now, another piece of this is the reward. People know what action to take, but there's no meaningful reward for taking it. People stop at stop signs all the time. They don't get a prize for that. And no, I don't think we need a prize for every single action, but what will keep someone motivated over time? How will the change be sustained? Maybe it's a thank you from their supervisor. Maybe it's a chance to mentor someone else who's learning a skill. Maybe it's a promotion in the future. Maybe it is a reward of some sort. How will you pay off a meaningful reward for taking that action? That's how you reinforce the behavior. Otherwise, you're going to have this amazing training and maybe they implement it once or twice, but they're going to go back to their old habit. So let's say you're rolling out AI training and you want people in your organization to use generative AI. They know the expectation. You teach them how to use AI, but what's the reward for doing so? Maybe it's time saved. Maybe it's more creativity. Maybe it's some kind of AI showcase where they can share their accomplishments with others and be recognized. The important thing is that they feel something. They feel some sort of reward. They experience some sort of reward for making that change. Without these 5 things, you might find that your training isn't working. The behavior stops after the training ends. And that's obviously not what we want. So keep these 5 things in mind as you are designing for behavior change. I'll see you next time on Learning for Good.
Hey friend, was this episode helpful for you? Did you like what you heard? Do you want more content like this? Here are 3 things you can do. Hit subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice. Share this episode with a colleague. This means so much to me personally. I read every review. but it also helps me learn what content you like most so I can create more of what you want. All right, turn that Teams or Slack chat back on when you're ready, and I'll see you next time on Learning for Good.